Hello, Ian France here, and welcome to the third and final video on my review of Edward Tufte's course, Presenting Data and Information. This video will cover the homework assignment for the course and my overall thoughts. The assignment was to read The Parable of the Google Flu, Traps in Big Data Analysis. You can find a link to this exact article right down below following the same heading. It was published in the magazine Science, volume 343 in March of 2014. It has two visualizations that are represented by linear line graphs, and they're not all that exciting. They're pretty simple, but they do have some um, pieces from the course, which is they don't contain chart junk, and they are effective. So that's really the only tie-in other to the day's material. Other than that, it's a very topical assignment to read because it really goes into how big data has been used through these social outlets like Google, Facebook, and Twitter to predict X. There's some claim being made about prediction using these tools. However, they're commercial services. They're not scientific devices for measurement. They have a commercial interest in mind. And the article goes through talking about this may be one of the more hubris claims of the big data movement is that these information that's just being collected in vast huge amounts per hour from these services, um, claiming that they can do all these various things, like Google's claim that it would actually predict flu trends, which is really the focus of this, using only one data set is a claim based in hubris. And this points out that we should be moving a little bit away from using a single set of data and combining it with other more reliable sets and simpler models would actually show that this has been misleading. And that's what one of the graphs does show, is that the Google flu trends for influenza-like symptoms and dengue fever predicted higher amounts for 100 out of 108 weeks. That should have been detected, that you've been over predicting what's actually been happening 100 out of 108 weeks. And this is the second part of the article, which it gets into the algorithm dynamics when you have these services that are based in commercial endeavors. And so they're making improvements to search, which has been having a cascading effect on these projects and their prediction models. And it points out that sometimes Google makes over 80 changes to the search algorithm in a month. And you have these other projects that are dependent on that now have to adjust. And this is probably one of the sources of difficulty. But I say probably because this is one of the other points it brings up, is that civilians and private citizens really don't have access to the whole methodology that's being used to determine this. It's information that is part of Google's private business, and so they haven't really released even cleaned data sets for the public to view. And as the public, we may be limited from a technology standpoint to even analyze the vast amount of information that Google collects in a minute or in an hour. So we may have many limitations for reproducing and verifying these claims. The article top at the conclusion presents a couple of ideas on how to deal with this, which is stronger partnerships with universities and other institutions. There was an update published for Google Flu Trends last month in which that's exactly what they're doing now. So in August, they announced partnerships with its three universities and working on this now in a bigger picture to continue to enhance this prediction model for influenza-like symptoms. So I thought it was a very interesting read because data analysis, machine learning, when you have unknown inputs coming into your algorithm, and H1N1 was one of the unknown inputs, it was non seasonal, and Google was not able to predict that. The flu trends prediction for those symptoms of H1N1, the swine flu, it missed it, didn't detect it. And I show that down in the graphic below. So it's really cool to see that there is a move to actually try to do some of the things that this article recommended a year ago. And all these things take time, but that's going to be this could have really positive results for all of us in the general public on the strength of the flu and what the symptoms are and where they're trending. And this brings up if you could really do that on a much more local, from a more localized standpoint, which is what Google could be really strong with, because the search and where you are and your location, that's an asset that is very difficult for the CDC. So we'll see what happens. But that's the gist of the article. But I really encourage a deep and thorough read of what's in there if you're working in big data analysis, not so much on the visualization side, but it's just interesting from a data standpoint. All right, so last part, my overall thoughts from the course. And throughout these videos, I call it a course. You could make a claim and say, but Ian, really what you did was attended a one-day presentation workshop and you did all this extra stuff. You're kind of being a little too specific in calling it a course. But one of the themes that Tufte brings up is being a lifelong learner. And I decided to use that language, one, because it's part of what he actually calls it himself. So there's a consistency element there. But two, I took it seriously. And I made an effort as a lifelong learner to read, research, and sort of share what is living knowledge for me with you. And that is a hard thing to do. And so it did take me quite a bit of time and a lot of reading to put this all together. So I felt like the effort that I put into it was equivalent to that which I would put into a course that I take online or a course that I take elsewhere in the world, whether that's an education institution or through workshops. I kept detailed notes. I went back, reread things, really tried to learn from it. And Tufte encouraged that throughout the whole day. So part of it was a bit of homage from me to say what it is that you're encouraging adults to do, and his transition from pedagogy at Yale and teaching young learners and young adults to andragogy in teaching adult learners. I mean, who better to learn from than one who has experience in these two realms of educating people. And so it was a bit of respect for me to really take that seriously. And I was impressed at his demeanor, how he spoke, the things that he highlighted. And so I did want to take it seriously. And so I called it a course, and there were things that stuck with me the same as any other formal education mechanisms that are available. I don't think you can cherry pick certain things that what defines a formal education and what defines the education that somebody pursues for themselves. I think they pretty much pair up at a certain point, and that's what I was hoping to do. Other thoughts I have: the encouragement of the principle of charity is very important to me. I try to live my life with this principle always in mind. And it's a pretty simple principle, but it's really easy to ignore it. It is basically that anytime you're having a conversation with someone, whether it's a colleague or your spouse or your friends or someone whose books you're reading who's dead and no longer can defend against claims that you make against them or that they make for themselves, the principle of charity always says interpret what that person says with the best possible light. They should actually should totally agree if you restate their position that that's exactly what they want, even if that's better than what they said. So sometimes you have to do that, and sometimes you have to adjust, especially from authors of the past who didn't see certain scientific breakthroughs, who maybe made certain claims about things that then change. Your you have a duty to be charitable in the interpretation of those things. So the final thing is he talks about finding diamonds in the swamp. And he uses that expression a lot. And that's back to the andragogy point of adult learners and taking away the things that you find valuable. So as you go through material, as you read things in life, find the things that are valuable to you, find those diamonds in the swamp, and carry them forward. He encourages also sort of a GNU, GPL, generic, which are licenses for software of public interest. That when you have a scientific breakthrough like the internet, which he talked about quite a bit, and putting those kinds of things back into the public's intellectual sphere or their control, he really encouraged that, and that really resonates with me. So I enjoyed that, and those are just some additional thoughts from the day that weren't really connected to data, but things that stuck with me. And I hope you've enjoyed my review, and I look forward to talking with you in other videos. Bye for now.